Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Another captivating conversation that explores the intricacies of marketing and advertising, highlights the importance of target niche audiences, and then underscores some transformative powers of value-driven business practices. So let's get this one started. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
Look, a business can give you everything you want in life: prestige, wealth, freedom. It can also take everything away from you. This show is for those who are willing to take that risk. These are the real life stories of entrepreneurs. But before we start, I have one small favor to ask. Please leave a comment. It can be advice, critiques, tips, feedback, or share this with someone, because your engagement is the most valuable and most powerful form of social currency. So thank you, and welcome to another episode of Business Bros. All right, business bros, welcome to today's episode where we have the pleasure of speaking with a distinguished marketing expert who has worn many hats in the industry. Join us as we have this enlightening conversation that delves into the world of advertising, creative marketing strategies, and the significance of value-driven business. We're going to explore the realm of marketing and advertising with guests who specializes in the AHAA consumer segment. We're going to find out what that is. Discover how this niche audience holds the key to valuable insights and learn the consultancy-led approach that drives their success. So let's welcome to the show, Mr. Howard Chang. All right, Howard, here we go, man. Thank you for being part of the show.
What an intro. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, man. Paradise begets paradise. Let's get this show started, my friend. By the way, he's out there in the Bahamas. He's got beautiful sunshine in the background. I'm in San Diego, beautiful sunshine in the background. So not a bad way to run a podcast. Let's start off with the obvious question, Howard. It's the plug one, the one at the beginning. Tell me about what it is you do, my friend. If you can explain it as simply as a fifth grader could understand it. What do you do? What do you do for a living?
Well, I am a serial startup guy. So this is, I think, my sixth or seventh business I'm in right now. The Turn Lab is actually a marketing technology consultancy. We do everything from, build digital commerce sites to do market research. But one of the other things we do is we're also an incubator. We incubate other startups. A recent startup that we launched because we felt there was a problem we had to solve from the pandemic is called Just Boardrooms. It's an Airbnb of professional meeting spaces because we found that remote workers were struggling to kind of connect with people in person. So we are focused on marketing. That's obviously a very important part of what we do. But we kind of put it in the container of solving business challenges. So that's really how we look at marketing.
That's a unique way of approaching business. I feel like so in my classroom I teach a lot of different topics, but one of the things I like to do is show Shark Tank and kind of talk about the different aspects of business. And I feel that's kind of what you're doing here. You're taking some of these startups, you're giving them that little incubation space, probably helping them with their marketing, consulting, structuring them so that they operate like a business rather than just a startup at the very beginning. Who's the target audience for that? Who's the businesses that you're going after?
Well, interesting you brought up Shark Tank because the Canadian version of Shark Tank called Dragon's Den, which I think preceded Shark Tank, one of their OGs, Jim Treliving, who's the big Boston Pizza CEO, he's actually one of the investors in this new, and I had to literally pitch him like it was at Shark Tank. It was quite interesting to pitch a dragon or a shark, as you call it. But in terms of our clients, for the Turn Lab, we have global clients, like we have Yamaha, Brother, a lot of big technology clients. We also work with not-for-profits. We work with, a lot of national, regional brands as well. On the startup side, a lot of it is based on, is this a company we align with in terms of values? Are they doing something interesting? Are they solving a social or environmental issue? We are a values-based company. We're B Corp. We're certified B Corp, like a Patagonia or Ben and Jerry's, very similar type of ethos. So we look at everything. We look at alignment because when you're an incubator, you have to invest, right? We're not just taking fees for our services. We're also taking some equity stake. So we're putting a lot of time and energy. So we have to really believe in who we're supporting.
Let me ask you about your background and how you got here, because I feel like every entrepreneur has a different path. For some of them, it's purely experience-based. They knew they had to be an entrepreneur. They go into the space. They have mentors. They're self-taught. For others, they go the traditional college route, maybe the corporate route, and then kind of end up leaving on their own. What's your background? How did you get to be here, kind of incubating companies, multiple startups of your own?
Well, I am Canadian, but I was made in Taiwan. So I came here, quite young, and my parents were like immigrants, right? So, Asian immigrants, old school. My dad was a civil servant. My mom was a civil servant. They got the jobs they could when they came to Canada. I remember my dad basically telling me, you got to be a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer. Those are really your only choices. And so when I got into architecture, he actually kicked me out of the house. He said, That's not an honorable profession. Get out." So it was interesting in terms of like I had no entrepreneurial background. I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family, but I somehow just couldn't wrap my head around working for somebody else. I worked summer jobs. It never really quite worked out for me. So I think I had it in my head ever since I was about 14 or 15. I had to start my own business. So I think I'm kind of like the accidental entrepreneur. I kind of fell into it more out of I knew I didn't want to do the corporate side.
Isn't it strange how, well, maybe fitting, you didn't have very much support when it came to entrepreneurship, much less picking a career. I mean, you picked a career that is, quote, not honorable, and end up getting kicked out of the house. You end up going into entrepreneurship yourself, and now you're doing almost the complete opposite. You're fully supporting, fully nurturing some of these companies. Granted, you're taking an equity stake in them, so that you have a vested interest in here. But that's a huge shift from not having the support to having the support. Walk me through, you're 15 now and you decide you're going to go into a venture yourself. You have no support. What does an entrepreneur do? I mean, this is where you really have to strap on those boots and figure it out, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's that old saying, youth is wasted on the young. And I think when I was young, I made a couple of key mistakes. One, I felt I had to do it on my own, the whole idea of a self-made business person. I did not ask for enough advice from smarter, more experienced people around me. And that might have come from the fact that I felt isolated in my family life around entrepreneurship. I've had siblings tell me while I was struggling to build a business, hey, just give up, drive a cab, that'll be easier for you. Listen, by the time I was 22, I kind of broke my first $1 million in sales. By the time I was 29, I was bankrupt. So, entrepreneurship has lots of ups and downs, as you know. And so a lot of it was, did I have the intestinal fortitude to get through some of those ups and downs and bumps? And a lot of that didn't come from my parents. It came from, well, maybe indirectly. My parents were big supporters of me. I was a competitive martial artist, competitive athlete all my life. And I think in sport, you learn how to pick yourself up when you get knocked on your butt, right? And I think I took some of that, brought that into the business world. And I think that's kind of how I made it through those first years. I had to keep picking myself up. My parents weren't believers. My friends and family weren't believers. So I had to have a lot of self-belief.
That's the competitive nature of an athlete. You believe in yourself, and it's I heard a saying the other day. It was, and I'm gonna botch it, but it was something like champions aren't made on the field, they're made in the dark, right? When nobody's
Yeah.
looking, when it's dark outside, when it's cold and you got to get up and you're doing your conditioning, that's really where that sword is really forged for an athlete, and then they shine on the field. And I feel like that's kind of what happens to an entrepreneur. There's so many times where it's cold and it's lonely and it's dark and you're just still going kind of nose to the grindstone trying to figure it out, not even knowing what the outcome's going to be, kind of having a vision of where you want to go, but not necessarily knowing the outcome of what the work is that you're doing at this particular point. Now you've been in this space for some time. You've had some experience. You've had some ups and some downs. You're also helping nurture some of these clients that come on board early on. What advice do you give now to startups, people who are getting started, even the ones that you probably don't end up working with? I'm sure there's pieces of advice that you kind of give them. What are some of the things that you're seeing with entrepreneurs where they're going to make some mistakes, and advice that you're giving them to kind of avoid some of the pitfalls that maybe you and I had at the beginning?
Yeah, that's an awesome question because here's what I've seen in terms of a lot of misfires in terms of some startup founders. The first thing I see is they often fall in love with their solution versus falling in love with the problem first. So they have this idea, and ideas, I hate to say it, are kind of a dime a dozen. Like, oh, I'm going to come up with some technical platform to solve the. Well, do you really even understand the problem? So a lot of times, the reason why a lot of startups, vast majority of startups fail, is that they didn't actually deeply understand the problem. So their solution was maybe for a problem that either didn't exist or for a problem that other companies have already solved better. So I think fall in love with the problem, not your solution. I think that's a very key piece of advice. The other one is that, understand that it takes a village to create anything, right? So surround yourself with the smartest people you can possibly have around you. Be humble, ask questions, ask the stupid questions. Some of the best entrepreneurs I've known have this superpower of, like, they ask the dumb questions because nobody else will ask them, and they often reveal some of the most amazing truths, right? And then the other thing too is to know that the journey to success is not a straight line up; it's a staggered line, and hopefully it takes you up over time. But there's always those moments where you're crying in fetal position in the dark, and you're having to come back from that, and that's where surrounding yourself with supporters and peers help. And also surround yourself with critical thinkers that question what you're doing. That's also good. The one thing I will say about my old school Asian parents is that their constant critique and questioning what I'm doing actually made me think harder about why I was doing it, how I was doing it. I actually think it made me better. So just having a bunch of cheerleaders around you isn't necessarily the right way to go either.
Yeah, I think that's a generational thing we're losing here, right? They don't want to get your feelings hurt when they critique you these days, but the critiques are absolutely critical. I mean, I really love how you said, you don't fall in love with the problem. You fall in love with the solution, but you don't fall in love with the problem. And the problem is really, really where a lot of the success lies, and understanding what that problem is. It comes from talking to those clients and asking a lot of those questions. And I don't think we have the guts today to even ask some of those questions, or give critiques for fear of being judged ourselves. There's always I feel like there's a pivotal moment in every entrepreneur's career where something changes. Maybe it's in their business and they start to see that hockey stick go up. Maybe it's a downside. You talked about, making that $1 million in sales, but also being at the lowest low. What do you feel was a pivotal moment in your entrepreneurial career that kind of, you always look back and be like, man, this is where I learned this, or this is where things really changed for me?
Well, listen, having bought myself a brand new Porsche at 25 and my first house at 25, and then ending up in my parents' basement as a single dad at 29 because I went bankrupt, that was a pivotal moment. I definitely realized I did not want this. I definitely wanted something else in my life. So I think it gave me a good frame of reference. I think early success sometimes taints you a little bit. Like, I was living the high life and I had multiple gold cards when I was in my 20s, driving an arrest me red Porsche, at 25, gets you in a little bit of trouble. I wasn't humble. I didn't have humility. I think the bankruptcy taught me a lot about humility, taught me a lot about really looking deeper at who I am, what I want. Later on in life, not that many years ago, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. That was a huge pivotal moment for me. Well, I mean, in that case, it's an existential moment, right? Where you're thinking, what are you going to do? And I think being diagnosed with cancer was actually what catalyzed me to shut down my old ad agency. I had this very successful, $6 million revenue ad agency that I ran for 20 years. But, I was starting to question the relevancy of that model, that ad agency model. I felt consultancies, tech companies were taking a lot of that space, but I wasn't doing anything about it. I hadn't made the move. Well, cancer diagnosis kind of like kicked me in the butt and went, okay, what are you going to do for the rest of your life, however long it might be? Very fortunately, I came through it, and I'm cancer free now. But in that process, when you're thinking about that, those are big moments. I think you're going to have a number of big moments in your life, either personal or professionally. And in the end, it's about, what are you going to make of that moment? Are you going to step back and recede into the background, or are you going to take the hit and then continue to lean in and lean forward? Those are the questions. And I think the great entrepreneurs, the great leaders, the great community leaders, the Nelson Mandelas, who took his 29 years of imprisonment and then came out and leaned forward. Those are the moments that really test you and change you as a person.
They make life Interesting for sure. Maybe in the moment you don't think of, that stepping forward, but definitely in the hindsight and what you become after those trying moments are intense. Yeah. And knock on wood, I haven't had any, diagnosis like that, but I could imagine setting a priority in why am I doing things and does this even make me happy? If I have a certain amount of time left on this planet, why am I not doing those things that really put me in a high spot, like I don't know, doing a podcast interview from from the nice little islands in the Bermuda somewhere, right? Like having some sort of change towards your goal, I think makes that huge difference. And at the end of the day, I think customers end up coming to work with you mainly because of who you are as an individual. Your skill set and those things are definitely gonna help, but there's a reason why they come to you, and there's different places where customers can go, but they find you for a specific reason. What do you think that is? What do you think sets you apart from your competition? The thing that you do best, the reason why customers come to you?
One of our co-founders of the Term Lab is this very, very smart young woman, leads our creative team. And about a year or two working together, she said to me, you know what's the most frustrating thing about you? But I also think it's your superpower. You have no work mask. You are
Hmm.
exactly at work how you are in every other aspect of your life. And so I think for me, whether it was conscious or not, I just always want to bring my authentic self to the table. So I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to do it in a way that's respectful. I'm going to be there to help you, but I'm not going to be there to coddle you or to make you feel good if I know that ultimately that's not going to serve you. So that's how I operate. And I would say that that's what I engender with my team. And so I think we do operate from that point of view of, authenticity is a too often used term now, but we basically show up and just be real, essentially, right? And then, you know, I really do think the evidence-based piece of how we work, you mentioned the AHA panel earlier. That's a 10,000 member consumer panel that we built and curated over the last 5 years. And we specialize in a space that we call active, healthy, affluent, aware. So we have a lot of businesses that we work with that are in that space. So whether they're, it's about wellness or sustainability, or it's about, social good. We do a lot of work in that space. So that type of consumer is really important to us to gain knowledge. So we do a lot of audience research, a lot of market research. We have analysts on staff, we have strategists on staff, and that's where I think we're a little different from a lot of other marketing agencies who kind of YOLO on some of these solutions. We like to say, listen, let's not throw stuff at the wall to see if it sticks. Let's use some evidence. At least it gives us a better framework, a better chance of success. You don't always hit it out of the park, and our clients, I think, appreciate it. People talk about, oh, we need to understand data. Well, who really actually understands data? So it's really about taking that information, insights, and making it useful for companies.
Yeah, and it's tough to do that without having a nice soundboard, essentially, of clientele, of people, of questions that you can ask of a demographic to get some of that feedback. That's definitely a huge asset for you to have internally in your business, so that you can take relevant data points and kind of start that campaign. Because no matter what you do, there's going to be iterations and changes and tests that you're going to run when it comes to people's marketing campaigns, but at least you're starting with some data up front from a pool of people. Is there any like secret sauce to really honing in on a niche and understanding the problem so that you're able to fall in love with it? Or like what's an approach that people can really come to? Because I think you're right. They start off falling in love with their solution, but not really identifying that problem. If they don't have the 10,000 people to bounce questions off of, what can they do to really identify a problem and really talk to that target niche that they're after?
I think the most important thing companies need to do is they need to talk to their customer, talk to their audience. And if you have an existing business, it's often pretty easy. So let's say you own a retail store. Um, have a few set of questions that you ask your customers when they come in and as they're exiting. How did you find out about us? What type of product were you looking for? Did we deliver on our service? Just really simple things like that. And if you're a startup or you're a online only business, there's so many ways to pull customers down. So whether you use a poll on Twitter, poll on YouTube, there's all kinds of way to get customer intelligence. You can also do secondary secondary research online. Like it's actually really simple to do it. It's really taking the time to get it done. So yes, you can hire a company like ours to do it really professionally, and that will probably give you, better outcomes. But I think anybody can go out there and use this crazy thing called the internet and get a whole bunch of information there. And if you have an existing customer base, like if you developed an email marketing list, don't just send them offers, ask them questions. How am I doing? How often do you want to hear from me? What do you think about this particular challenge in society right now that you're trying to solve over here, but maybe you need to get more insights for them. So really asking your customer and looking at the market is probably step number one.
Yeah, that email list, growing it and utilizing it effectively are always two different things. It's tough.
Yes.
It's tough when you start off to build that database. You're not really realizing the value in collecting name, email, and phone number usually early on in your company. And then when you finally do figure it out, how do you nurture that going forward? That can be a little bit tough. And you guys are definitely doing helping customers kind of understand that aspect of their marketing campaigns. What are you working on to kind of enhance the customer experience, or maybe enhance the operations within your company? I feel like when any entrepreneur gets started, they try to get really good at one thing, and then once they're good at it, they always try to either become more efficient or add to that repertoire of tools that they have to offer. And that's kind of where this question kind of comes from, is what are you doing to improve upon your systems and processes for either the client or internally for your company?
Yeah. So when we came up with the Turn Lab, we had this idea that we had to create some type of contiguous connection between all these various services that are out there, right? So yes, there's market research. You can hire a market research firm to do it. Yep. You can go hire a media company to buy you media. You can hire a technology company to build you an app. But when we came up with the idea of the Turn Lab, we wanted to create all those practices in-house. So for instance, we have like 9 enterprise developers in-house working out of our office in Toronto, by the way. Even though I am in the Bahamas, I do have an office in Toronto. So I have 9 people working, banging out digital commerce sites for Yamaha and places like that. And then we have great media. But you know what? Sometimes they don't all work together as well as they should. So the idea of collaboration, the idea of working together so that the sum is greater than the whole, or whatever, however that saying goes. I would say that that's our biggest challenge. That because media people don't think and act like creative people, and creative people don't think and act like market research people. So getting them all in the room, speaking the same language, rowing the same direction, is definitely a challenge. I just hired a new CEO actually, so I'm still the owner, but I hired a CEO that came from a much bigger agency, about 3 or 4 times their size, because I wanted her to come in and build more practices around collaboration of knitting these pieces together. Now we have parts of our company that her old company didn't have, because we are a bit of a different animal, but she understands the process of collaboration better than most. So I do think, and again, that goes back to surround yourself with really smart people. Like my ego could say, nope, I've got to be the CEO because that's what's going to take us there. But what I've learned on my 5th or 6th company is that what gets us here isn't necessarily what takes us there. And so hiring the right leader to go and do that next iteration. And of course, I'm going to serve a very important role, as a advisor and spiritual leader and owner. But some people are better at scaling than others. And I think, knowing that and learning that. So I think that idea of how do we create a more seamless process is probably something that we can continue to improve on for sure. It's a great question, by the way, because not everybody likes to talk about their problems, but I love falling in love with our problems.
Yeah, I mean, and for sure, you have this business wisdom that's come from multiple business ventures on your own, different nurturing. I mean, the fact that you can replace your CEO self with a CEO who's competent in growing the company in the direction that you want it to grow. And that's hard to do for a lot of people, to kind of let go of the reins and give somebody else full control. That's huge. So, kudos to you. Kind of, it's a testament to my next question, which is all about vision. And the fact that you already let somebody come in who is going to take the company in the direction that you want to go in. But as the CEO, as the owner, you kind of have that vision of where you want to go. You have to sell that vision to your CEO. Your CEO in turn has to sell that vision to the hierarchy below them, so that everybody's kind of moving in that same direction. What is the vision that they're going towards? Where do you see your company in the next couple of years?
So our mission for the Term Lab is to be the organizations that leaders come to solve their biggest challenges. That's our mission. And we're not quite there yet. But what is interesting, when this new CEO came in, she was a former CEO of a much bigger award-winning advertising agency in Canada. And when she came in, she was trying to figure out, this new model we had, and we're a smaller company. But the first thing she noticed was, are all your clients CEOs? Like, why aren't there more marketing people we're dealing with? And I said, because that's not who we are. Yes, we are marketing focused, but we see marketing as a means to an end to solving a business challenge. So the reason why you're interfacing with all these CEOs, some of them from multi-billion-dollar companies, is they see us as business partners, not just an agency that's doing some tactical work for them. So I think the thing for us is, we really want to make a bigger impact, and we want to help companies realize their potential through that kind of close partnership and thought partnership beyond just building a website for them or building a campaign for them. And I think that's where we really differentiate in the marketplace. And people don't really quite understand it until they actually start working with us. I've had clients 3 months into working with us and went, you know what? You kind of sold us on the idea, but we weren't 100% sure. We actually know now what you mean. You're actually delivering on that promise. So it's a work in progress. We're still working on it, but we're definitely, we grew, probably 100% over COVID, because people were running into more problems. So they're coming to us for solutions. And we're now, just over 50 people, and it seems to be working.
You seem to be in love with that problem and providing those particular results that companies are looking for. So it's working for sure. If people want to reach out, they want to find out more about what Term Labs is all about, maybe how they can be a part of it, maybe they can get some nurturing and some funding and some help themselves. How can they do that?
Well, you can definitely reach out to me through our website, theturnlab.com. There's an email piece in there. We also have a very interesting thing called a strategy hack, which is a 2-hour high-powered, high-paced workshop that we do for some companies who qualify. So you need to apply, and if you qualify for it, that's something we might be able to do for you. You can also email me, howardc@theturnlab.com. Reach me on LinkedIn, and happy to connect.
Awesome. Howard, thank you very much for coming on the show today. Ladies and gentlemen, dude, there's always mentors out there that are doing some amazing things, that are showing you things that you might not even have thought was an issue in your company. But because they've already scaled, they know these things are coming, and you're going to want to get help from people who are successful at what they do. Howard and his team are definitely showing proof of that on a day-to-day basis. Hopefully you got an idea today that they're looking for the problem that you have, and they're going to fall in love with it to help you find the solutions that you're looking for. So Howard, thank you very much for being on the program today. Ladies and gentlemen, the website scrolling across the bottom is theturnlab.com, theturnlab.com. Make sure you guys check it out. Howard, again, thank you for being on the show today. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace. And we're out. It's over.
Thanks.
Go home. Is your business in need of marketing? Try starting a podcast, but not just any podcast. Podcast like a pro. We can show you how to take your business from being invisible to becoming a brand people trust. Go to www.businessbros.biz to get started today.